Alright guys, today is Saturday, May 6th, 2023. So today is technically my makeup day for Thursday when it rained all day long and I didn't get to do anything. So I've already got the 55 pushed out and got my table set up here and I'm getting ready to start in work again. So I'm going to weld the square nuts in this inner fender and get that pretty much set up. I am waiting on a box of the Norton Blaze grinding discs to come in so I can finish grinding, which I need to do some more welding. But anyway, I may get off on another project today. What I think I'm gonna, well, I don't think I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I just don't know if I'm gonna do it today. It may be a tomorrow or Monday project. I'm gonna modify the headlight buckets on the car to mount behind the fender like I did on the hardtop and a 56 Chevy Biller I had before. This is just my personal opinion, but when the headlight bucket goes in the front of the fender, the cars look bug-eyed to me. The headlights hang way out the front past the chrome trim ring, and I just don't like it. So if you mount the bucket behind there, it sucks the headlight back a little bit, and it just looks cleaner to me. But it's not that simple. You don't just take the headlight bucket and mount it behind. There's a lot of work you got to do that. But to me, it's worth it. So I'm going to do a full video series on that. Not a series, but a full video on that. And I may do that today because it's not going to take that long to do those inner fender deals. And, you know, I'm still got some more welding to do, but I'm going to wait on the grinding until my discs come in. So I'll show you here on the hardtop what it does when you mount the bucket behind. You can see just a little bit of the headlight poking out past the bezel. So you can imagine with that headlight bezel or the headlight bucket mounted in the front, how far that headlight would be sticking out here. So to me, it's a drastic change, and I love the look. I did have somebody ask about this and I forgot. These are Maxtel H4 headlights. You can get these on eBay. Now back when I bought these, they were like 49 bucks with free shipping. So, and it's a pair. So I do want to get a set for that car, but I'm gonna have to wait because I've already spent the money for the month. But anyway, they have almost a flat face to them instead of being so bulbous. But they also have a fluted lens, and I really love that fluted lens. It reminds me of the old KZ Kawasaki motorcycle headlights that they had. They kind of look the same, but this is an H4, meaning the bulb comes out the back of the headlight, so you can change the bulb. But I just like that look better. It looks really, really cool, and it's a subtle touch that no one's gonna know, you know what I mean? The average person's not gonna know I did that, but to me it cleans up the look of the car and doesn't make it look bug-eyed. So I'm probably gonna work on that today. I mean, there's no telling what I might get off on today. Let's see, the video that I posted this morning from the work I did yesterday, it cuts off. The video just cuts off at the end. And I was back here showing that aluminum washer with that countersunk stainless steel Allen bolt. The reason is the battery died in the GoPro and it just shut off. So I had to go in and let the battery charge for a little bit, and then I come back out, and I guess I didn't do a follow-up on what I was doing, which I was probably just talking and rambling on anyway. So you didn't really miss anything, but that's why the video cut off. So another thing I didn't show yesterday was when I was talking about these baffles. This is what I call a baffle. And it basically, you have your radiator here, so all the air going through the front of the car, they wanted it to go through the radiator and not through here. So I call these baffles. I don't know what they're technically called, but anyway, they're thin sheet metal. They got ribs in them, and you know, they're not very nice looking. I'm not going to change these out and build custom ones like I did on the hardtop, but I did show the hardware when it comes in from the back how ugly it looks, because you actually attach the inner fender that way from inside with the bolts. So what I'm thinking about doing is putting square nuts on it and reversing that, and I may go ahead and do that. But the hardtop, I did do that, and see how much better it looks when you just see the heads of the bolts that direction. I think that looks way better. But that bracket going out through there is an original baffle. I just trimmed it off and I drilled holes in it and plug welded it on. But I custom made my own baffles here out of pretty thick plate. I didn't roll beads in anything. That's why, because it's very, very thick plate. But I also drilled holes and used all thread pieces in the original holes in the core support where the bolts bolt that on. And it's just an acorn nut, a washer and an acorn nut on the back, a little lock washer and an acorn nut, but it's hidden fasteners as well. So that is super clean looking and still looks bone stock, and that's what I love about it. If you guys haven't figured it out yet, I like stuff to kind of look original, because original never goes out of style, but it doesn't make the car look dated after several years. But anyway, I like changing and moving little subtle things around to make it look better and cleaner, you know what I mean? Another thing I need to touch on is somebody's comment was, shouldn't be doing that kind of work to a daily driver. Can somebody send me a copy of the rule book that says you're not supposed to like change hardware out to better hardware and that type of stuff for a daily driver? I need to see this rule book. And here's the bottom line. This is a car I'm building for my wife. We own this car. I'm not building it for somebody else to tell me how to put it together or how to build it. I'm going to build it my way. I don't need somebody to tell me how to build a car. I'm pretty sure I've got that part of it handled. But with that being said, I'm going to do the stuff that I love to do the most, and that's the fabrication and the building of the car. I'm not big on going out and waxing my car and taking it out for a drive. I'm more into building the car. I like changing things around to where they still look kind of stock. And that's just my favorite thing to do. So if I have to spend a week just modifying things to make them look better, that's what I'm going to do, like it or not. Now the other thing I didn't touch on was these button head Allen bolts, and I did run you guys through on how to polish these on the polishing wheel without having to go through and sand them and go through 2 or 3 different wheels and 2 or 3 different rouges to make them look good. You can pretty much do it with 1 buff and 1 rouge. The thing about these that I didn't touch on, and I'm not going to do this right now, this is what I'm going to do later, but the inset there for the Allen wrench is dull. So what I do is I take Q-tips and I cut them in half, and I dip them, I chuck them in the drill, and I stick them down in Mother's Mag and aluminum polish, stick it down in there, and hit the trigger. And that will polish the inside of where the Allen wrench goes. So, anyway guys, I'm gonna get started. Well, I know there's probably more button head Allen bolts that I'm gonna have to buy, but I'm not gonna have to buy a whole bunch, you know what I mean? So what I did was I have a very inexpensive coolant overflow bottle here. These are at the parts store. You can get them online. They're around 12 bucks, 15 bucks. They're very, very inexpensive. It's just an inlet and a cap, and that's pretty much it. Now I actually use this for a gas tank on one of my motorcycle projects, and I zip tied it to the upper frame tube, and the gas set on that side of it, so it left a yellow stain in there, kind of ruined it. So I'm probably going to end up getting another one. Now I was planning on modifying an oil filter, external oil filter, and mount it on there and modify it into a coolant bottle, but I never did find a lid. I went to 2 swap meets and I never did find a lid, so I just kind of abandoned that idea. Plus it kind of gets up there and in the way of a bunch of stuff, and I don't want to have to remove 2 things or 3 things just to pull a valve cover or work on something, you know what I mean? So I'm going to go ahead and just use this because, for one, it's clear, kind of clear. You can see the green antifreeze through it. So, you know, something like what I was going to build, and some of like what I have on the hardtop is a Billet Specialties black anodized one. You have to take the lid off to see the level. So this one is something, you know, for my wife, she can just see at a glance whether it's got coolant in it, or I can. But anyway, so what I did here, instead of mounting it up here in the front, which would be in the way of the factory horn mounting, the big factory horns go here, I basically drilled 3 holes, and I'm going to mount it back behind. Now, what I got into was that baffles way up in there. So when you put that in there, the cap's kind of a little bit back in. So I went through my boxes of crap here, and I found 3 rubber washers, or spacers, or insulators, you know, whatever you want to call them. I have no idea what they're off of. And I only had 3. So to me, it was kind of meant to be. Of course, I'll clean these up after paint because they're kind of dingy. But that basically works as an isolating type spacer. It could be hard mounted, but anyway, it's going to space it out enough to get it out, you know, past the upper thing enough to where you're not banging your hand into the core support trying to get the cap off. So kind of interesting. And then I'm going to get 3 button head Allens, which I need 1 1/4 long ones, and they'll go in on this side, so you'll see that stainless steel button head Allen on this side, but on the back, instead of seeing threads, I'm going to use stainless steel acorn nuts just to kind of hide the threads, but I think that'll look pretty good. Just another little custom trick here. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some hardware options you have for your car if you don't want to go through and do all the, weld square nuts on the back of the inner fender. If you just want like a stock replacement bolt or screw in a button head stainless steel Allen, you can buy them. They are available. You can get them on probably Amazon, eBay, no telling what. Now, one of the Tri-5 Chevy suppliers, if they're still in business, I don't know. It's not one of the famous ones, and I cannot remember the name. I never can think about it. I mean, there's lots of Tri-5 suppliers. Really used to be. There was Don's East Coast Chevrolet, Classic Chevy, International or something maybe. I don't remember. But one of those companies sells a complete front-end sheet metal fastener kit, and it comes with washers and these stainless button head Allens in the correct thread, for all the ones that would technically go in here and all the inner fenders and everything else. They sell a kit specifically for a 55. They also sell a kit for a 56 and a 57. So I just don't remember. You're just gonna have to do some research, but one of those companies sells that whole kit and it comes with washers. So if you want to do just a stock replacement button head, they are out there. You can buy them. But I can tell you, for one thing, Amazon or eBay, buying a big bunch of them is going to be cheaper than buying them from one of the, like that supplier. Because I want to say, I bought this kit for a 56 Bel Air that I had probably back in 2010, maybe somewhere in there, 11. So that's how long ago I bought that. And I want to say that kit was shipping was like 50 bucks or something ridiculous back then. I don't know what it is now. But you can do that, but I cannot remember the size of that. For some reason, I want to say number 12, but don't hold me to that. They're a sheet metal bolt is all they are. Now, there's other options available out there. When you get on the internet and start looking for stuff, it's amazing what you'll find. Like right here on eBay, I don't remember what I paid for these because I bought these probably a year ago for this car. These are stainless steel 5/16 by 18s, which I bought to put in the core support here and for the horns and these down here, and probably a couple other little spots on the firewall. But these are almost identical to the factory. That's a factory bolt, and they're almost identical with that. They have a flange on them. They also have the serrated part on the back, which the factory has a serrated part, but it's not as wide, but it doesn't really matter. Keep in mind that when you tighten these down, if you don't have a washer on there, they're going to tear the heck out of your new paint, especially if you go real, far on your tightening. So there are those available. And this is another one that is at my local hardware store. This is a stainless steel sheet metal bolt, but this is bigger. So this is actually bigger than the one that the factory takes. But it is the same as those if you wanted those to match. Instead of using the factory hex head stuff. But these have a flange as well, but they don't have a serrated back on them. But to me, they kind of match, you know what I mean, in a way. But stainless steel to me is the way to go. You can polish it on a polishing wheel. It'll stay shiny for years and look fantastic. So just another option you have there. I fortunately have a bunch of, stainless steel hardware stuff laying around because I try to separate all my stainless stuff. And, it's real handy when I'm fabricating a part or trying to bolt something together. Even if I'm doing mock-up, I would rather go grab a shiny new bolt over an old crappy one that's, going to be rusty and, probably tear up threads or something. But anyway, keep another thing in mind here is washers. So most of the time at hardware stores, when you go to get washers, stainless steel ones, they are paper thin and they cave in. Like if you use a paper thin one from the hardware store on this, because of that giant hole in that fender bracket right there. Actually, here's a better deal of it there. So you got a 3/8 hole in the center. So if you use them paper thin ones, when you go to tighten that down, it just mushrooms it in. It just caves it in. So you need a thick washer. These are referred to as fender washers. So when you're doing your Google search or whatever, looking for these, look for fender washers because that technically means they're going to be a little bit thicker. But anyway, these I special bought from eBay, I think. And you got to keep in mind, you go to your local hardware store, you're going to pay, you know, a lot of money for one stupid bolt. You can get them online, a whole bunch of them. You're going to get more than you need, but it's still going to be cheaper than going down there and nickel and diming, you know, going down there 1 week and then going back the next and going back the next to get another thing of bolts. So to me, that's just kind of the way to go. Now I'm just doing button heads on the visible stuff up here, these button head Allens. I'm just doing them on the visible stuff up here. But like everywhere else, like the lower part of the fender down there, I'm just going to use a regular bolt down there because you're not going to see it, you know what I mean? But I am using stainless. And also keep in mind, anytime you use a stainless steel bolt, no matter whether you're putting it in steel or you're putting it in stainless steel, it needs to be anti-seized because it will gall, especially when you tighten them down. It pulls them threads, and when you go to loosen it, it'll start coming out kind of easy, and then you'll notice it gets hard to pull out, and sometimes they shear off. So use anti-seize, it is your friend. All right, so I got the core support here. Now these baffles, when they go on, these top two bolts are those coarse thread nasty bolts here. So they've got where these bolts go in this way, so you can see the raised area here. So I tried using a pair of pliers, but that metal's pretty thick and I couldn't get it to budge. I was trying to flatten that off a little bit, but I can't get it done. So I'm going to go in here and grind this flush. I do have room to get in here and grind it flush, and I can still get in here and weld nut on here. I probably won't be able to get the top too good, but as long as 3 sides of it is pretty much done, or 3/4 of it's good, it'll be all right. So anyway, I don't want those in there. I want to put button heads in here as well. So what I'm going to do is this area, when I grind this raised area down, that's going to be really, really thin metal, which I'm enlarging the hole anyway to go to a bigger bolt. But when I grind that down, it's going to be a pretty big thin spot. So if I put a square nut in there, the square nuts are kind of small actually. So I don't think a square nut's going to be good for that. So I'm going to use flanged nuts. That way the flange nut's a lot bigger. Alright, so I've already hammered this flange back flat, and then this had a light crease in it right through here, so I got a block of wood laying here, but I've got my dolly laying there, so I hammered it back out. And I can show you right here. See how that's smashed in from the over tightening of the bolt? I don't know how good that's going to show up in the camera, but anyway, it's the same on all of them. So this is just part of the restoration side of it. You need to do this if you're restoring your car as well. If you're using original stuff, you just need to make sure and hammer everything back straight before you mock it up, especially before you paint it. Oh, that one's really bad. It's like a square caved in on that. These thin sheet metal baffles like this, see how that's tweaked out like that? It's not going to do you any good to go in there and try to straighten that and get that perfectly straight because it's so thin of metal. When you bolt it in, it'll go where it needs to go and you won't notice it. So don't worry about straightening everything unless it's like kinked up, you know, pretty bad. But this being a really broad bend in it, I'm not worried about it. too bad. That'll work, man. The corner bent down a little bit right there, so I'll straighten that out. That works. So what I'm most likely going to do is I'm going to take my 36 grit disc on my angle grinder and I'm going to slightly round every one of these corners. Just slightly. And because they're sharp. Now when I go in here and I blast this front and back to bare metal and I go in and prime it, because I'm pretty sure that this, I don't need to body work it, I can just prime it and then go back and, you know, use a little sponge block that kind of flexes a little bit because this is not perfectly flat. But anyway, I'll block out the primer real nice and then paint it. But when you've got sharp edges like that, when you're blocking, it'll grab your paper and tear your paper or tear your block or cut your hands. So I'm just going to soften every one of those off a little bit. They just don't need to be that sharp, you know what I mean, is what I'm saying. Alright, so another thing I'm going to do to these baffles, with the factory wiring harness coming through this hole here through a grommet, which you can buy new grommets, and I have a set. But anyway, the ground for your headlights, there's a ground here and there's a ground on the baffle on the other side in the same place, and they took a flathead screw and they had a star washer behind them. So that star washer on a ground is always a good idea because when you tighten it down, those star teeth dig into the metal and it gets a good ground, other than just screwing a screw that's smooth underneath on. So I don't want to put a flathead screw in there. So what I'm going to do is weld a 1032 square nut to the back side. I've already cleaned this area up with a Scotch-It disc, and I enlarged the hole a little bit with my step bit, and I'm going to use a 1032 stainless steel Allen button through there with a star washer, stainless steel star washer. So it'll be just like factory. I'm routing the wiring and everything on the engine compartment just like the factory did, kinda. Along the core support and on the inner fenders and stuff. Not so much the starting harness where it comes out up and over and down. Mine's going out the hole in the floor back there and coming out to the starter for that stuff. But anyway, I bought this a long time ago off of eBay, and this is a stainless steel star washer assortment from number 4 to 1/2 inch. And I want to say this was like $10 or $12 or something. Very, very inexpensive. Again, if you went to your local hardware store and just bought a couple of star washers, they're probably going to be like, in stainless, they're probably going to be, you know, I don't know, 30 cents, 40 cents a piece, maybe more, I don't know. So to me, it's just smarter to buy the multi-sets like this. But so that is what I'm going to do there. So putting a stainless steel button head Allen in there, it will match the button head Allens and all this. So again, going with that button head Allen theme where it all matches. I think it'll end up being pretty nice. Now, if you wanted to do, I've done this before on a car I had, but if you don't want your ground visible out the front, you could just weld the hole solid, and you could actually, on the back side of the core support right here, you can just drill a hole right there in the back of it and put your ground on the back. And that way when the hood's open on the car, you don't see that ground in the ring terminal there. It's on the back side of it. But I'm not going to mess with that. I'm just going to put it right around back to the front because, again, I'm going for a little bit more original look. I'm just, changing some fasteners and that type of stuff just for something to be a little bit cleaner looking. All right, I ran my sander over the outside part where the bolts go, and it's just in case there's any metal that's kind of raised up from the bolting in, taken in there. Just to kind of smooth it off, but you can really see how deep them serrated bolts cut into that metal. That is really deep, man. So again, you'd have to go in there and putty that and, prime it and block it and that kind of stuff. But, and I still may do that, but if I shoot these with my Rust Defender sprayable filler, it'll fill all that stuff. When I block them out, they'll look brand new, and that's most likely what I'll use on these and the inner fenders because they are a little bit rough. But I did round the corners everywhere, all the corners, and I just knocked the corners off again so I don't cut myself, or hit it with the sanding block and cut the sanding block, or the chunk the paper. But that's how sharp the corners are, and it's a slight mod that it didn't take but a minute to do that. These 3 holes here, I'm trying to keep as much heat off of these thin sheet metal panels as I can, because I don't want them warping real bad, which I can hammer and dime back out. But I'm going to have to weld these up, and there's 2 up here I need to weld up. But I do have to mount my windshield washer jar bracket, so I might try to build a bracket to utilize maybe these 2 holes or something. I don't know yet. Just kind of depends. I'll have to get in there and look, but I'm going to be putting the glass windshield washer jar bracket in here on the driver's side behind the inner fender, or behind the core support, I'm sorry. And I'm going to do it the same as I did my hardtop here, and it's using mostly original stuff, but I modified it. And again, I have a playlist for Try 5 Chevy Tech Tips, and I show how to mod one of these on the cheap and make it actually work with a universal Anco windshield washer pump. But this one I built a bracket for down in there, and it bolts. It's just a big piece of plate with an L bracket welded to the back of it, and it has hidden fasteners in it with acorn nuts on the back side, so it's completely smooth, and you can see a little bitty 12-point ARP down there. And then this is a Buick bracket, a 50s Buick bracket. I like those brackets better than the Chevrolet, but anyway, I have 12-point ARPs bolting that to that bracket, but it looks really clean and it looks stock, especially with the reproduction sticker. I'm going to be doing the same thing to this car, and I've already got all the parts here, so cool stuff. I got the core support bolted back on. It's not tight, I just bolted it on there. But anyway, I've got the horns on here and the baffles bolted on. So these horns, I've got to open the holes up to fit these 3/8 button heads, because I went up a size. And when I did my inventory the other day on the bolts, I was just going to replace it with 5/16, because that's what these up through here are originally. But going up a size to 3/8 button heads, it hides the groove cut in the middle from the original bolts, and I don't have enough 3/8 button heads. I'm short 4. I need 4 of them. So I actually went to Lowe's to see about buying some, and they didn't have any. So I'll have to order them offline, or online, I guess. But anyway, these horns, the brackets, this is just a solid round hole down here, so I just opened it up a size with a step bit. This one is actually ovaled for, adjustment a little bit. So I drilled and tapped the existing square nuts in here to 3/8 by 16. So now they'll take the bigger hardware, but these, the holes are too small in the horn bracket, so I have to open them up as well one size. So what I did was I went in here and bolted the bottom one on, because it's just a hole, it's not slotted like that. So I bolted it on pretty firm, and then I can get a look at that, and it's pretty much dead in the middle. So I am going to go in there with a die grinder and just open up these sides with a cone burr, and it looks like it's pretty much about the same on this side as well. So that'll turn out pretty good. But so I've got the button heads on everything. I've got all these corners rounded. It just looks pretty nice. Got the little button heads for the ring terminal for the ground with the star washers on there. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do here where I've modified this, and I've got an idea in my head, so I'll get back with you. Well, I was brainstorming, trying to figure out what I can do to make the sides right here where the radiator mounts look a little bit better. So I'm wanting to, I originally was going to cut all this off and weld in all new, pretty thick piece of steel and then drill holes in it so it would be, you know, further out. Because my radiator that I had was free. It's a brand new aluminum radiator, but it's for a V8 position, so the mounting's backwards because I have a 6-cylinder core support. I'm running long water pump stuff, so the radiator has to be out here, but I don't want to spend, you know, $200, $300, whatever, $100 on a new radiator. I'd rather use the one I have and just sheet metal up something, you know, modify it. I got no problem with that. So I had this spare baffle in my shed, and I'm pretty sure I've got another one that the bottom's rusty on. So what I'm looking at is this has those beads rolled in it. You can see the beads, the 3 beads rolled in it. I only need a section for the 2 beads because the horns mount here, and I'm thinking about trimming this down to come out to here, like cutting this top corner off to where it's square, but this bead's up past that, so I only need to worry about these 2. But I was thinking about cutting a strip out of this, and that would be my filler plate for that, and the beads would line up. It'd be a continuance, kind of, even though they taper down at the end. I thought that'd be kind of cool. But I can break the ends in my sheet metal brake and fold over a little spot on the top and on the front and make it bend over a little bit so it looks cleaner. But I think I need to go get the radiator and bolt it up on here, and I might actually plate it all in, because it seems like when you bolt the radiator in here, you can kind of see down in it, and it's got that bracket welded on it. You can see in through it. So I'm thinking about making this to where it has a breakover on the top and a breakover on the front, and then just weld the stitch when I fold it over into a box, kind of, if you're following what I'm saying. I want a piece to be bent over this way and a piece bent over this way on this, so it's looks like it's squared over there and there. I don't really care about the bottom because you won't see it, but when you're standing at the front looking in. So I'm gonna have to dig in that shed to get that radiator out because it's way far at the back of my loft. All right, another day checked off the list. I didn't get hardly anything done today. I got some work done, I just didn't get very far. Brainstorming takes time, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna come out and work on it again tomorrow all day. And I'll probably get quite a bit further actually. But right now I gotta clean up this mess and get it all put inside. I'm getting hungry too, so it's time to quit for the day. Thanks for watching.